Assalamualaikum dan selamat pagi. Anda bersama saya Nabilah, Khaleeda, dan ini Niaga AWANI. Seperti biasa pada jam ini kita akan berikan laporan berita bisnes, kewangan ekonomi dalam dan juga luar negara. Jadi kita mulakan dengan perkembangan berikut. Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim menyeru anak muda warga Malaysia di Perancis agar terus menuntut ilmu dengan penuh kesungguhan dan menjadi ejen perubahan dalam usaha membangunkan negara ke arah masa depan yang lebih gemilang. Dalam ucapan beliau pada Majlis Ramah Mesra bersama diaspora Malaysia di Paris, Anwar menekankan bahawa Malaysia amat bergantung kepada bakat muda untuk mencorak masa depan yang lebih cemerlang dan berdaya saing.
It's always the need for the young to reflect, the need to always move, undertake reform, but be wise. He's not a smart individual, a brilliant guy, a genius. He thinks they can solve all the problems of the world. No, it doesn't work that way. It's not a party, not a but to be able to embrace society, get them to understand through reason discourse, and to have the courage of conviction to draw the line what's permissible and what's not.
Beliau turut menasihati golongan muda agar sentiasa berpegang kepada prinsip dan bersedia memikul amanah besar demi kemajuan negara. Majlis tersebut turut menjadi platform perbincangan bermakna antara kerajaan dan diaspora Malaysia mengenai peranan serta sumbangan mereka dalam pembangunan negara. Dalam sesi tersebut, Perdana Menteri turut berkongsi ikhtiar kerajaan Madani dalam melaksanakan pembaharuan menyeluruh yang merangkumi pertumbuhan ekonomi inklusif, tadbir urus berintegriti dan keadilan sosial yang memartabatkan setiap lapisan rakyat. Anwar berkata kerajaan komited untuk memastikan setiap rakyat Malaysia sama ada di dalam atau luar negara memainkan peranan aktif dalam menjayakan agenda perbaharuan negara. Majlis yang berlangsung dalam suasana mesra itu turut dihadiri oleh wakil-wakil kedutaan, pelajar, profesional dan rakyat Malaysia yang menetap di Perancis. Anwar kini berada di Perancis untuk lawatan rasmi atas jemputan Presiden Macron. Beliau dijadual mengadakan pertemuan empat mata dengan Macron di Istana LAC dengan agenda utama termasuk perdagangan, pelaburan, tenaga boleh diperbaharui, semikonduktor, pertahanan, pendidikan, ekonomi digital dan kecerdasan buatan AI. Perancis kekal sebagai antara 5 rakan dagang utama Malaysia dalam kalangan negara Kesatuan Eropah. Pada tahun 2024, jumlah dagangan dua hala mencatatkan RM15.95 bilion dengan RM6.26 bilion direkodkan antara Januari hingga Mei tahun ini.
Lembaga Kemajuan Tanah Persekutuan Felda Umum pelanjutan tawaran pengambil alihan sukarela tanpa syarat untuk baki saham dalam FGV Holdings Berhad FGV, dan lanjutan itu dibuat sehingga 5 petang Jumaat 15 Ogos 2025 sebagai tarikh kedua dan tarikh tutup terakhir bagi penerimaan.
Maybank Investment Bank Berhad, Maybank IB dalam satu kenyataan bagi pihak Felda berkata tiada pelanjutan lagi selepas tarikh tutup tawaran itu. Felda telah menghantar dokumen tawaran bagi rancangannya untuk menswastakan FGV Holdings pada 16 Jun dengan tawaran RM1.30 setiap saham dijadualkan dengan tarikh tutup tawaran pada 5 petang Isnin 7 Julai melainkan ia dilanjutkan. Setakat Khamis, Felda dan pihak yang melaksanakan langkah pelaburan untuk mencapai matlamat yang sama memegang 3.24 bilion saham FGV mewakili 89% daripada jumlah saham terbitan syarikat. Mereka mempunyai 3.19 bilion saham atau 87.46% pada tarikh tawaran. Katanya pemegang yang masih belum tetapi berharap untuk menerima tawaran itu dinasihatkan untuk merujuk kepada dokumen tawaran untuk butiran, terma dan syarat tawaran serta prosedur untuk penerimaan tawaran dan mempertimbangkan dengan teliti perkeliling penasihat bebas bertarikh 26 Jun 2025 sebelum membuat sebarang keputusan. Pada 26 Mei lalu, Maybank IB bagi pihak pembuat tawaran menyampaikan notis itu kepada Lembaga Pengarah FGV maklumkan hasrat Felda untuk melaksanakan tawaran pengambil alihan sukarela tanpa syarat. FGV yang membuat penampilan sulungnya di pasaran utama Bursa Malaysia pada 2012 pada RM4.55 sesaham berjaya memperoleh RM10.5 bilion dalam salah satu tawaran awam permulaan terbesar di Malaysia.
Baik, seterusnya berkenaan dengan Bursa Malaysia di mana ia ditutup bercampur-campur pada Khamis apabila kenaikan kukuh berterusan yang dialami indeks penanda aras baru-baru ini telah dikekang berikutan aktiviti jualan saham wajaran tinggi terpilih yang berlanjutan. Dan pada 5 petang, fusi Bursa Malaysia KLCI atau FBM KLCI susut 1.22 mata atau 0.08% kepada 1,548.99. Jadi bagi mengulas selanjut, kita akan terus bersama dengan tetamu kita dalam talian, Syed Muhammad Kifni, Syed Kamarudin, Ketua Strategi MIDF Research pada waktu ini. Mungkin pertama sekali, Syed, kalau kita lihat nak kita rangkumkan sepanjang minggu ini bagaimana prestasi FBM KLCI memandangkan beberapa faktor mungkin mempengaruhi pergerakan pasaran saham. Silakan, Syed.
Terima kasih atas jemputan ke AWANI. Sepanjang minggu ini, indeks FBM KLCI mencatatkan kenaikan 21 mata atau 1.4% dan berakhir di paras 1,549 mata pada penutup hari semalam. Ini merupakan lantunan kenaikan harga di pasaran saham tempatan bagi 2 minggu berturut-turut. Kebanyakan pasaran saham sedunia juga mengalami peningkatan pada 2 minggu kebelakangan ini. Di Amerika Syarikat, indeks Dow Jones naik sebanyak 2.3% sepanjang minggu ini, manakala di China, indeks CSI 300 naik 1.2%. Di rantau Asia Tenggara, indeks utama Thailand iaitu SET dan indeks utama Singapura iaitu STI pula masing-masing naik 4.1 dan 1.4% sepanjang minggu ini. Momentum lantunan harga di pasaran saham sedunia dan tempatan ini bermula pada minggu lepas berikutan pengumuman persetujuan atau pengumuman arahan gencatan senjata oleh antara Israel dan Iran oleh Presiden Donald Trump. Kenaikan harga saham semenjak 2 minggu kebelakangan ini dilihat bersifat beransur namun berterusan. Kami rasakan bahawa ini adalah kerana para pelabur perlukan masa untuk berasa lebih berkeyakinan bahawa gencatan senjata tersebut yang diumumkan secara unilateral oleh Pentadbiran Amerika Syarikat akan kekal dipatuhi oleh kedua-dua pihak iaitu Israel dan Iran. Di samping faktor gencatan senjata, para pelabur di pasaran saham juga menyambut baik pengumuman Pentadbiran Amerika Syarikat bahawa mereka akan memberi pertimbangan untuk melanjutkan tempoh tarif pos atau penangguhan tarif yang sepatutnya berakhir pada pertengahan minggu hadapan. Lanjutan tempoh ini dilihat sebagai langkah positif demi memberi lebih masa kepada negara-negara yang terbabit untuk mencapai perjanjian perdagangan dengan Amerika Syarikat pada terma yang lebih munasabah. Selain itu, para pelabur asing juga telah kembali semula di pasaran saham tempatan pada 2 minggu kebelakangan ini dengan nilai belian bersih setelah mencatatkan nilai jualan bersih pada 5 minggu berturut-turut sebelumnya. Pengukuhan nilai ringgit berbanding dolar Amerika semenjak minggu lepas dilihat sebagai antara pembangkit kepada kembalinya minat pelabur asing di pasaran saham tempatan. Walaupun pasaran saham tempatan berprestasi agak baik akhir-akhir ini, namun sebagai perbandingan bagi tempoh setengah tahun dari bulan Januari hingga bulan Jun yang baru saja berakhir 4 hari lalu, indeks FBM KLCI telah susut 6.7% atau jatuhan sebanyak 109 mata. Antara punca utamanya adalah akibat kerisauan impak tarif Amerika Syarikat terhadap pertumbuhan ekonomi negara dan juga akibat faktor geopolitik antarabangsa yang tidak begitu menentu.
Kalau boleh saya kongsikan juga untuk pengetahuan pelabur kaunter atau sektor mana yang mendahului dan juga mana yang mengalami kejatuhan untuk sepanjang minggu ini untuk minggu pertama bulan Julai 2025.
Sepanjang minggu ini, 12 daripada 13 indeks sektor didagang pada tahap yang lebih tinggi. Ia didahului oleh indeks sektor teknologi yang naik sebanyak 6.1%, manakala indeks sektor kewangan adalah yang tercorot dengan catatan 0% sepanjang minggu ini. Kenaikan tinggi indeks sektor teknologi tempatan pada minggu ini adalah seiring prestasi positif harga saham teknologi di pasaran Amerika Syarikat dengan indeks teknologi S&P 500 melonjak ke paras rekod tertinggi. Sektor teknologi dilihat akan mendapat manfaat yang baik daripada prospek perjanjian perdagangan terutamanya di antara Amerika Syarikat dan China. Manakala pengurungan prestasi indeks sektor kewangan tempatan minggu ini pula dilihat berkait kemungkinan pemotongan kadar OPR atau kadar polisi semalaman oleh bank negara yang dijangka akan mengurangkan sedikit keuntungan terutamanya bagi bank-bank yang mempunyai banyak floating rate loans atau pinjaman kadar terapung dan juga FD atau deposit tetap.
Mungkin yang terakhir sebelum kita akhirkan sesi perbincangan ini, kalau kita lihat sekarang FBM KLCI bergerak dalam jajaran berhati-hati, namun apakah jangkaan hala pergerakan pasaran saham dalam masa terdekat ini, Syed?
Seperti yang dinyatakan tadi, indeks FBM KLCI mencatatkan penjutan pada tempoh separuh pertama tahun ini. Namun sentimen pasaran telah mula beransur pulih akhir-akhir ini berikutan kejahatan data di Timur Tengah dan prospek perjanjian perdagangan dengan Amerika Syarikat pada kadar tarikh yang lebih munasabah. Seperti contohnya, Presiden Donald Trump pada hari semalam mengumumkan kadar tarikh 20% bagi import barangan dari negara Vietnam. Itu kadar yang lebih rendah daripada tahap awal setinggi 46%. Dalam masa terdekat, kami jangka bahawa hala pergerakan pasaran saham adalah positif, namun seperti lazimnya pergerakan ini akan berselang-segi dengan aktiviti pengambilan untung. Juga dalam jangka sederhana, kami berasa optimis bahawa trend dasar bagi indeks FBM KLCI adalah positif. Ada beberapa faktor yang dilihat akan menyumbang kepada jangkaan trend menaik pasaran pada tempoh separuh kedua tahun ini, terutamanya asas ekonomi Malaysia yang baik dengan permintaan domestik yang mampan dan dagangan luar yang diversified atau pelbagai, dilihat akan mengurangkan kesan tarif Amerika Syarikat terhadap ekonomi negara. Berdasarkan faktor ini, KDNK Malaysia diramal tumbuh sekitar 4% bagi tahun ini dan seiring jangkaan pertumbuhan ekonomi makro, prestasi korporat juga dijangkakan untuk mencatatkan keuntungan yang sihat pada tahun ini. Keduanya kami lihat kemusakan semula dana-dana asing akan juga menyumbang kepada kenaikan harga saham. Para pelabuhan terbangsa dilihat kembali ke pasaran saham tempatan berdasarkan asas ekonomi yang baik dan didorong oleh jangkaan pengupahan nilai mata wang berbanding dolar Amerika. Dan akhirnya jangkaan trend positif indeks FBM KLCI telah didukung oleh nilaian yang relatif murah. Pada masa ini, indeks FBM KLCI didagang pada nisbah harga pendapatan sebanyak 14.2 kali. Tahap ini adalah di bawah purata 10 tahun historical sebanyak 16 kali.
Mungkin yang terakhir kalau kita sempat tanyakan sebelum kita tunjukkan data dan prestasi berkenaan SBM KLCI, FBM KLCI, kalau saya boleh kongsikan apa pandangan saya berkenaan dengan prestasi indeks FBM KLCI yang dilihat orang kata selepas pengumuman kerajaan mengenai perbelanjaan fiskal sebagai contoh ataupun projek infrastruktur ini memberi sebarang impak positif kepada sektor pembinaan ataupun GLC untuk sepanjang minggu ini. Apa yang boleh saya rangkumkan?
Sekiranya kita lihat indeks sektor pembinaan telah menunjukkan prestasi yang baik sepanjang tahun ini untuk separuh pertama tahun ini. Dan prestasi baik sektor pembinaan ini antara pemangkinnya adalah tindakan fiskal kerajaan untuk meningkatkan perbelanjaan yang mana kita lihat sedikit banyak akan memberi sumbangan positif kepada prestasi syarikat-syarikat pembinaan.
Baik, terima kasih diucapkan kepada Encik Syed Muhammad Kifni, Syed Kamarudin, Ketua Strategi MIDF Research atas perkongsian dan juga masa yang telah diberikan untuk sepanjang 10 minit ini, dan segalanya akan kami rangkumkan dalam semua platform digital Astro AWANI dan juga astroawani.com. Namun pada waktu ini saya akan kongsikan data dan juga statistik terkini berkenaan dengan ringgit. Kalau boleh saya tunjukkan prestasi ringgit untuk setakat hari ini 4 Julai 2025, hari Jumaat. Kalau kita boleh tunjukkan prestasinya pada waktu ini adalah 4.231 ringgit berbanding dengan $1 Amerika, dan ini adalah prestasi ringgit itu sepanjang dalam lebih kurang seminggu. Kalau kita dapat lihat nilai ringgit itu pada penghujung bulan Jun adalah sekitar sedikit lemah berbanding pada waktu ini, iaitu 4.2351, dan untuk pengetahuan penonton, jika graf itu menurun bermakna nilai ringgit itu mengukuh, dan jika graf itu menaik nilai ringgit itu melemah. Dan paling tinggi setakat kalau kita lihat dalam jangka masa ini dan paling lemah itu adalah lebih kurang pada sekitar Jun 23 hari bulan, dan nilainya adalah 4.2917 berbanding dengan dolar Amerika, dan paling kukuh adalah lebih kurang pada 1 Julai pada pembukaan hari pertama bulan ini, iaitu Julai, lebih kurang 4.231. Ini adalah berikutan faktor sentimen-sentimen luaran, dan juga di mana kalau kita lihat ketidaktentuan geopolitik dan segala apa yang berlaku antara Iran Israel dan juga antara Amerika Syarikat dan juga China, ini sedikit sebanyak memberi kesan kepada prestasi ringgit di Malaysia pada waktu ini. Namun kalau boleh kita tunjukkan sikit pergerakan ringgit itu dalam jangka masa yang lebih lama sedikit untuk kita tunjukkan. Kalau kita boleh buka di sini, antara bulan ke bulan kita dapat saksikan pergerakan nilai ringgit itu pada awal tahun dibuka dalam sekitar 4.4816, namun kita dapat pergerakan itu makin mengukuh pada bulan 5, iaitu pada bulan Mei dalam sekitar 4, kita boleh katakan lebih kurang 4.1910, dan ia makin mengukuh menjelang pada bulan Julai tahun ini 2025. Itu adalah berkenaan dengan ringgit kalau kita bandingkan dengan $1 Amerika. Namun untuk pergerakan ataupun prestasi Bursa Malaysia pula, baik, mari kita alright. Baik, berkerakan dengan FBM KLCI untuk setakat pagi ini jam 9.04 pagi. Nilainya adalah 1,550.29. Ia menunjukkan peningkatan sebanyak 0.08% dan 1.30 mata untuk pagi ini setakat jam 9.04 pagi. Namun kalau kita nak tunjukkan pergerakan FBM KLCI itu dalam sepanjang satu minggu, kita dapat saksikan pada Isnin ia dibuka lebih kurang pada sekitar 1,536.78, belum sampai 1,550, dan kita dapat saksikan penurunan sedikit memasuki hari Selasa dan kembali meningkat pada hari ketiga minggu ini, iaitu hari Rabu, dalam sekitar 1,548 dan kekal pada jajaran 1,540 dan 1,550, dan ini adalah berikutan dengan reformasi fiskal yang dilaksanakan kerajaan, antaranya adalah berkenaan dengan pelaksanaan ataupun perluasan cukai jualan perkhidmatan SST, dan juga berkenaan dengan tarif elektrik dan pengenalan RON 95 dan sebagainya. Ini sedikit sebanyak akan memberi kegusaran ataupun menjadikan pelabur itu lebih berhati-hati, dan ini kita dapat lihat dengan kenaikan turun naik graf itu di sini. Kalau kita nak tunjukkan lebih kurang bagaimana pergerakan saham itu dalam jangka masa sebulan, kita dapat saksikan pergerakan graf itu, di mana kalau kita boleh tunjukkan sebentar ya. Baik, ini adalah pergerakan graf kalau bulan sebelumnya pada bulan Jun. Kita dapat saksikan pada Jun 9, Jun 16, Jun 2023 dan Jun 30. Kita dapat saksikan pergerakan yang lebih kurang sama, kerana di mana waktu ini ketidaktentuan itu berlaku pada jangka masa yang orang kata tidak menentu, dan ini mungkin akan berterusan sehinggalah penghujung tahun ini, dan kita akan terus bersama dengan pakar ekonomi untuk membincang berkenaan dengan perkara ini untuk mengetahui apa yang kita boleh jangkakan dan apa langkah strategik yang boleh dari segi peringkat domestik, peringkat antarabangsa untuk kita menangani dari segi cushion the impact itu sendiri. Dan ini adalah antara yang saya boleh rangkumkan berkenaan dengan prestasi ringgit dan juga Bursa Malaysia. Dan banyak lagi perkongsian yang akan kongsikan selepas ini, namun kita perlu berhenti rehat dahulu dan kembali selepas ini.
Ayah aku mati mati sebab cakra. Selagi cakra masih ada, jiwa aku tak tenang.
Hari ini kita berdepan dengan ancaman yang serius yang didatangkan oleh sekumpulan pemberontak yang kita sendiri tahu, organisasi Cakra.
Untuk kalahkan cakra, we need a new set of eyes and ears.
Dengan government tu pun semakin dekat. Apa yang you nak recruit untuk penetrate Cakra? Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
You tahu kan tanggungjawab yang you akan tanggung?
Kau nak apa sebenarnya ni?
Saya nak awak masuk cakra, jadi orang kepercayaan Aziz.
Tak bahaya ke?
Saya akan ada dengan awak. Every step of the way, saya akan pastikan awak selamat.
Aku nak kau monitor Surya. Aku tak nak siapa-siapa tahu pasal benda ni.
Bersama-sama rakyat kita akan bangkit. Kuasa rakyat.
Honey Trap. Stream episod terbaru dahulu, eksklusif on demand dan 9 malam di Astro Citra.
Uniform Tentera Darat Malaysia TADM bagi peserta program latihan khidmat negara tidak seharusnya menjadi isu hangat.
Jenayah penipuan pelaburan mencatatkan jumlah kerugian tertinggi pada tahun ini setakat 2 Februari lalu.
Kementerian Pendidikan memandang serius isu peningkatan trend penggunaan rokok elektronik.
Lembaga Lebuh Raya Malaysia LLM memperluaskan larangan kenderaan berat memasuki lebuh raya pada waktu puncak di beberapa jajaran terpilih di sekitar Lembah Kelam.
Welcome back to Niagawani, and here's some international updates. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq closed at record heights on Thursday after a stronger than expected US jobs report, while Nvidia shares spiked and its valuation neared $4 trillion. Traders quickly priced out chances of an interest rate cut in July, with the odds of a 25 basis point reduction in September at 68%, according to CME Group's FedWatch tool, down from 74% a week ago.
Nvidia's market capitalization neared $4 trillion. Data showed non-farm payrolls increased by 147,000 jobs last month, 33% more than the 110 jobs forecasted by economists polled by Reuters. Unemployment fell to 4.1% last month, a better result than the 4.3% expected.
I think the market's hitting new all-time highs is something that is likely to continue, and that's not just my opinion, but rather history. If you go back to World War II, you realize how swiftly we went from a new all-time high on February 19th to a 10% correction. That was only 22 calendar days. Swift declines tend to imply shallow sell-offs and fairly rapid recoveries, which is exactly what we got. Also, history says that we tend to advance another 10% before being vulnerable to a decline of 5% or more. So I still think, at least in the near to intermediate term, meaning over the next several months, we still have upside potential. Well, I think the next move for the Fed really is to remain on hold. The data came out strongly this morning. The bond market saw interest rates rise a bit in response to that. Also, the expectations for a Fed cut were delayed to September, probably at the earliest. So, people are waiting for the next shoe to drop. But what we find is that the economy continues to remain resilient.
The report was released a day early because of the Independence Day holiday on Friday. Trading volumes were lighter than usual on Thursday, with markets due to close early at 1 p.m. Separate data showed the number of Americans filing new applications for jobless benefits fell to a 6-week low last week, and U.S. services sector activity picked up in June as orders rebounded but employment contracted for the third time this year, underlining the impact of policy uncertainty on businesses.
Nvidia hit a market value of $3.92 trillion on Thursday, briefly putting it on track to become the most valuable company in history as Wall Street doubled down on optimism about AI. Shares of the leading designer of high-end AI chips were up 2.2% at $160.6 in morning trading, giving the company a higher market capitalization than Apple's record closing value of $3.915 trillion on December 26, 2025. Analysis says the AI trade should help propel the S&P 500 and Nasdaq for the next several months. NVIDIA's newest chips have made gains in training the largest artificial intelligence models, fueling demand for products by the Santa Clara, California company. Microsoft is currently the second most valuable company on Wall Street, with a market capitalization of $3.7 trillion as its shares rose 1.5% to $498.5 trillion. Apple rose 0.8%, giving it a market value of $3.19 trillion in third place.
Well, certainly when you look to other companies in the past that were the most valuable, whether it's IBM or Exxon, you have to say the only place it can go is down. However, I think with NVIDIA now being the most valuable of all time, it shows that time has moved on, that inflation, that prices have increased, and it also shows the importance of tech in general and AI in particular. So I think that the implication is that even though we could always see some digestion of recent gains, that technology really will likely be the driver, at least for the next few years to come.
All right, now let's break down what's happening in the US stock market. And behind me is the Standard & Poor's 500 index stocks categorized by sectors and industries, and size represents market cap. And right now you'll see the sea of greens. Green means gains and red means losses. And I'll start with Apple first. Apple here shows green color where it was upped or increased by 0.52%, and the current stock price is $213.55. And the latest update on Apple is Apple's high-octane racing film F1 the movie roared to the top of the US and Canadian box office this weekend, fueled by a star power and a finely tuned marketing campaign, according to ComScore. And the movie, which stars Brad Pitt as a Formula One racer who returns to the track after an accident nearly ends his career, brought in $55.6 million in ticket sales in the two countries. And that tally edged past $45 million to $55 million pre-weekend domestic forecast from the box office company. Worldwide receipts topped $88 million, propelled by the sport's strong fan base in Europe and Latin America. Racing films typically sputter in theaters, according to Daniel Loria, Senior Vice President of Box Office Company and theatrical e-commerce and data services firm. The most successful of the genre, the widely acclaimed Ford versus Ferrari, opened to a modest $31 million in November 2019, and that's on Apple. Meanwhile, NVIDIA also shows a green color as well, and it was increased by 1.33%, and the current stock price is $159.34, and that's under the semiconductors technology. NVIDIA hit a market value of $3.92 trillion on Thursday, briefly putting it on track to become the most valuable company in history as Wall Street doubled down on optimism about AI, and shares of the leading design of high-end AI chips rose as much as 2.4% to $160.98 in morning trading, giving the company a higher market capitalization than Apple's record closing value of $3.95 trillion on December 26, 2024. And the shares were last up 1.5% at $159.60, leaving NVIDIA's stock market value at $3.89 trillion, just short of Apple's record. And NVIDIA's newest chips have made gains in training the largest artificial intelligence models, fueling demand for products by the Santa Clara, California company. Microsoft is currently the second most valuable company on Wall Street, with a market capitalization of $3.7 trillion as its shares rose 1.7% to $499.56. Apple rose 0.8%, giving it a market value of $3.19 trillion in third place. A race among Microsoft, Amazon.com, Meta Platforms, Alphabet and Tesla to build AI data centers and dominate the emerging technology has fueled insatiable demand for NVIDIA's high-end processors. And moving on to Tesla. Tesla is under the auto manufacturers. It shows the color of or sort of red over here. It was down a little bit by 0.10%, and the current stock price is $315.35, and that's on Tesla. But the current update on it is Tesla's sales volume in Germany fell by 60% in June. The German road traffic agency KBA said on Tuesday, although sales of battery electric vehicles rose overall. KBA said Tesla sold 1,860 cars in Germany in June, down 60% from a year earlier. And the number of Teslas sold in the first half of 2025 dropped 58.2% to 8,890 units compared with the same period last year. By contrast, the total number of newly registered electric vehicles increased by 8.6% in June. This is by KBA added as well. And automakers' sales dropped for a sixth straight month in France, Sweden, Denmark and also Italy, underlining the challenges the company faces after competitors with newer models gained market share and CEO Elon Musk's popularity declined. And the Germany agency said sales volume of Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer BYD jumped threefold to 1,675 units in June and rose almost fivefold to 6,323 units in total since the beginning of the year. All right, and that's the latest update on the US market. We have a lot more after these. And before we go for a short break, let's listen to this discussion by World Economic Forum. All right, we'll go for a short break. We'll be right back.
The superpowers move, the ground shifts. Power isn't just about might anymore. It's about narratives, networks, negotiation. We go beyond the noise to deliver laser-focused analysis on how power moves and what it means for the world. This is AWANI International, reporting the shifts in power affairs shaping the world.
I think if you want to understand what's the level of engagement somewhere, look at the absenteeism, look at the turnover, you know everything about that. Same, when you recruit people, your reputation is based on what people are talking about your company, their company, and if it's positive, you have more candidates, if it's negative, you have less candidates. So I mean, all those weak signals are important to understand what the level of connection and the glue you have between the company and the employees. And you can see if you have the level of energy, the enthusiasm, the excitement, you can feel it. You know, we are humans. That's why robots, it's nice to do some things, but some of us, you need also to keep in touch with your people. Today, to keep your people engaged, you need to give them trust and safety.
Welcome to Meet the Leader. I am Linda Lucina, and I'm excited to introduce Christophe Courtois. He is the global president at ADECO, which is one of the largest human resource providers in the entire world. We are going to talk about the future of work and the big trends that are shaping it, and how leaders can make sure that their teams are future ready. How are you, Christophe?
I'm fine, thank you.
I am excited to talk about some research that your group put together. Can you talk about it? It's a new global study, Global Workforce of the Future. Tell us about that.
You know, this survey is not the first one. We used to have a different edition in the previous years, but this time it was more about AI and the impact of AI. You know that we are talking a lot about that. For us, it was important to understand with the perspective of our candidate, having 35,000 people interviewed in 27 countries, to understand what does it mean in terms of impact, what's the feeling and the perception of people. So that's what it is to start. Let's say some key takeaway just to introduce this survey. The first one is, it's a question of what's the impact of AI today. The perception of our colleagues all over the place is pretty interesting, because they say, today I have saved till a lot of time in my perception, talking about 1 hour per day in average worldwide. Now, the second surprise is about the fact that it's mainly very homogeneous, whatever the industry, whatever the country. I would say the gap between the different people is 20% in terms of how much time did you save with AI. The second key takeaway is about leadership and management. Lots of people were interviewed, and they were advocating the fact that even if some of them were afraid, and by the way, 13% of them announced that they have lost their job, and from their perception it was linked to AI impact, lots of them said, 51% to be very accurate said it's an opportunity for us to find more job opportunities, or even for 46% to grow inside their own company. It means that the positive mindset of people facing AI is much more important than what we used to see in many previous surveys. In terms of leadership, they also recognize that somewhere they think that for 46% of them, their leaders are educated enough in order to get the right vision and to leverage AI to create a true impact in their industry. It means somewhere this point is important because you follow the people who have a vision and who have been educated before being educated yourself. In terms of management also, probably one key takeaway, which is one action point for all of us, is each time people feel not secure with AI, they keep very loyal with companies, but not for good reason, for bad reason. It's because they are afraid about long-term security in terms of jobs. 40% of them say, I am concerned about what could be the impact on my career path long-term. And perhaps the last one, a piece of action plan, is about how to upskill on our people. Among the 35,000 colleagues, only 25% of them has followed one single training course. It means that the vast majority of them don't know exactly what we are talking about. It creates somewhere some worry. And even for some of them, some concern in terms of health. We are talking a lot about burnout, for example. Probably the fact to educate properly our people about what could be the impact and how to keep employability is key. If I need to summarize in one single sentence, I would say protect the employability of people, not their job, because the job will change, but employability will be key.
And so given that, what can leaders do? I mean, we can start with the folks who might be staying, but maybe not growing. What should they be doing? What should leaders be thinking about?
Two things. The first one, being very open-minded about the impact and being very curious about how it works, how to collaborate, what could be the way to interact as fast as possible with a counterpart, and talking sometimes about a supplier, about provider of AI, but also some competitors, it's very important. The education is going very fast. I mean, you can't wait too much. The second one is to educate your employees to make sure that they will build not only a reinsurance for themselves, but an ability to explain how AI could be leveraged in the true life. I mean, it's no more a question of technology and science. It's a question of how to deliver your service or your product in a way which is much more simple, much more fast, or much more competitive in terms of pricing. All those things are probably what could leader done in order to make it done.
Mm-hmm. And on the burnout question, if I'm a leader and I want to make sure, of course, that people are challenging themselves, but I want to make sure that there's that balance so that people aren't also sort of driving themselves in the ground. What should they be thinking about? Is there a question they should be asking themselves, or a rule of thumb on to make sure that they are having these opportunities but not being exhausted?
No, probably there are two advice. The first one is for the people to be aware that things are changing very fast around them, and to keep also very curious and to dedicate time in a very proactive way on their own education is key. You can find a lot of tutorials or things like that even on the website, or you can ask for your employer to get this education piece in order to keep employability. That's the first one. In terms of culture, it's also probably for the companies a strong call for having a continuous learning culture. Just because I have an example in my mind, in some industries you have big disruption like automotive, and some companies would have liked for social reason to upskill their people in order to be part of the future company, the new company. But lots of them say they have refused to go for it, 2/3 of them by the way, because they don't have received any upskilling plan since more than 20 years. And you know what, when this muscle has like an atrophy, you don't feel prepared. You are not very trustful on your ability to continue to learn and to adjust yourself. So one is about the candidate to be proactive, very open-minded, very curious. By the way, the soft skills we are asking much more than before in the companies. The second one for the companies to have a culture of continuous learning, and still a lot to do on this fact.
Well, when you talk about the continuous learning, there was a really interesting statistic from your survey. It found, I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. It says that future-ready workers who seize opportunities and have experience with AI and invest in their own time into preparing for the future are just 11%. So there's just a very, a little over 1 in 10 digging into this work. How do we grow that number?
the two reasons why those people are ready to work or feel they are ready to work, because again, it was like they have to declare if they are or not, is because once they have worked on themselves, I mean, they have invested time personally, proactively in order to be ready to work. And at the same time, they were working in an environment where the company were taking care about their employability. When I was talking about 25% of our candidates receiving one single education piece, it means it's not enough. So we come back to the previous advice. Take care about education of people. Involve them in the plan you have for your company, because it's a strategic topic, but the strategy is also how I will make it very operational, very tangible to deliver result. And trust your people. If you share that with them, believe me, they will take care about the employability. It's crucial now.
So many companies have wonderful resources, but maybe people still kind of don't know what direction to go. What should leaders be asking, or how can they sort of be a coach or a guide to help employees figure out what might be needed next, or how they can maybe level up their own skills in a way that would be an upgrade for everybody? How should they be giving that guidance?
I think collaboration is key. Talking about another soft skills, collaboration is key. I have a good example, by the way, talking about ADECO. We had like a strategic agenda to refresh, and we did that with our 150 top leaders in the company. And you know what? We have involved our leaders not only to have one full day dedicated to strategy, but we had a second day in order to do first education, and second to have some working sessions, splitting those guys in 10 groups of people in order to understand how you can create value based on the learnings they have received in the morning. But you know what? It was instrumental of the power of people to understand how it works, how to leverage the asset, provided you connect the dots between what is a science to start, something very far from you, and the reality of what could bring as, I would say, an impact at a day-to-day level. And among the 3 days we had in this convention, the most appreciated one was the second one, with education on AI and how to build the strategy based on this technology as an enabler. It's a true example of what to do in many companies, not only for the top leaders, but cascading that at each level of the company till, I would say, the first line of the company. Very important lesson learned.
As we were talking about skills and soft skills that leaders have, in your mind, if people were going to shore up one soft skill, if I'm a leader listening to this and it's like, what should I be prioritizing? What's the most important thing?
It's a tricky question because it depends on many things. It depends on your context, the culture of your company. But let's say some are really acknowledged. We need to acknowledge some of them are crucial, whatever I would say the place. Collaboration is one. You can't build your strategy or your delivery model alone. You need too many expertise in order to have the feelings that you can do everything alone, but not only alone, in a very fast way. And the speed of what we have to do is so important to build a competitive advantage. So collaboration is key. Second, how to solve problems. You know, AI can help a lot in managing many different things, but some things which are more like human skills are more challenging for AI to deliver. So solving problems, taking into account the culture, the context, the people in front of you is something which is something to focus on. Creativity is also important in a world where all what is repetitive tasks you can automate or manage that with data. You need to find a way to differentiate yourself from the others. So some few examples are those ones. But after, let's say, if the company is very emotional, which is the case also of our company, for example, this muscle of having people very strong in building warm relationship with people, like trusted people, finding the way to create this proximity, is a crucial soft skills where you can educate people. Because even if you have been educated in another way, when you are in front of this challenge, when you meet a lot of people having this culture, you know what? You change, you move your path. And that's the reason why, for example, in education piece, apprenticeship is so well appreciated in many countries because you combine, I would say, what are the hard skills you need to acquire, but you understand how to evolve in an environment which is different from one company to another one, and by the way, very unstable, so changing very fast.
I'm curious your take on something. You talk about the apprenticeship model, right, which is classic, but I wonder, in your opinion, do you think that there is a risk of people having forgotten a little bit about it because maybe it's not necessarily something that is in place in their workplace, especially as we've become a little bit more task-driven and will be more task-driven. And of course, a lot of the science says that, AI is going to be prioritizing tasks maybe above other things. My question to you is, do you think that we are losing the apprenticeship model? And if so, what would that mean?
No, I think the contrary. I think apprenticeship is increasing all over the place. You have new legislation in many geographies. I know that US, for example, is taking care about apprenticeship more than before. France did a lot some few years ago, and it's here to stay. I mean, what is nice with apprenticeship is you can have a great education. The question is how you leverage not only your knowledge, but also the key principles you have been learning in order to position that in front of a problem to solve, in front of a context. The beauty of apprenticeship is when you are talking about AI and you understand the power of data and why data can create, I would say, a big impact, and you arrive in a company for an interview and you don't know what this company, how they are driving their, I would say, sales forecast, for example, and where to target their product campaign. If you understand the company, because you have taken time with the marketing head and you were part of his day-to-day life, and on top of that, you have the key principle, you will connect the dots and you can be proactive, you can be creative. Otherwise, you are only an expert and you just execute somewhere the plan. I have another example. Apprenticeship is good also to do inclusion. I remember with Umando in France, which is one of our subsidiaries, we have managed a cohort of 12 refugees coming from different places in the world for a Salesforce administrator position. Believe me, it was incredible. Because those guys talking different language were here to learn language, the French and the English one, but on top of that, being able to be educated for Salesforce, like a very tech, I would say, education. But after a very successful first cohort, Salesforce has decided to go for a second one. That's the power of apprenticeship. Probably if you are in a high school and you have a very exclusive recruitment process, I'm not sure you have the same chance to be inclusive. Here you can be inclusive because you can test and you can leverage not only what you will learn, but the way you express your talent in the marketplace, which is what are looking for the companies today.
Yourself, as you work with others on your teams and you kind of try to collaborate, but also sort of say, hey, here's my vision, and here's trying to what we're kind of looking for. Here's our brand of how we do this. What steps do you take for apprenticeship yourself as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, first you try to be a role model. That's the first, because people are looking at you to understand if it's a narrative or a strong conviction. I need to say somewhere I was intern for Adecco, so I mean I have somewhere in my past this education piece. I've been learning to work in a company thanks to my employer today. The second one, I've taken some responsibility in France to create the global apprenticeship network, and now I'm part of the board of this important institution. And when you give the opportunity to people to think that it could work, they are very vocal in front of their clients. In our industry, lots of our colleagues face scarcity everywhere. But you know what? It's not just a statue. It's you have some solution in front of that. But it means sometimes you need to change your mind. Instead of looking for a famous candidate with 3 to 5 years of experience, graduated from the best schools, you are looking for motivation, true talent or potential to be successful, and you put the engine of apprenticeship, it works very well. So for sure, you need to educate the companies who don't used to do that. But I don't have seen so many companies who were, I would say, approving the concept and stopping to work like this. By the way, if I take again France, today we recruit 6,500 apprentices by year for the beauty of our clients in many different industries. Now it's a proof, it's no more a concept. I think to demonstrate that by the figures, by the facts, it's also very important.
In my world, I work in media, and in the olden days, you would sit in a bullpen, and the junior reporter would be able to hear the most experienced person doing an interview and understand how they're talking to people, how are they navigating that. It can be a little more challenging when people are maybe more remote. There's great opportunities with remote work, but there's also that inability maybe to see all the pieces coming together. What can those companies do to make sure that there's still that apprenticeship piece and people are still being able to have people as models for them? What can they do?
I think you're right. Mentorship is probably the best way to learn how to do things, whatever the knowledge or the expertise you have acquired in your first education piece. Remote work, it's something which is part of the employment market now. It's something which is well adopted in many places. And by the way, it depends also, the intensity of remote work depends on one, the culture of the company, and coming back to that, and also the job you are delivering each day. But if you are talking about the induction of the young talent, you need to have people with a very strong proximity, because we used to say, trust your people. That's part of the way to go fast, to trust your people, to empower your people. But you can empower your people if you coach them. So you don't ask them to execute a task. You just give them a performance to achieve or a goal to achieve. And after you take care, what's your plan? Can you explain to me? Or you visit with them if it's in the sales part, for example. And you know, those feedbacks are great. And what is great with the technology today, it's like you have the reverse mentoring. GPT was a good example. You know, such a lot of people with a lot of seniority were asking to their intern or the new colleagues to educate them how to play with those applications, because it was part of their natural education, I mean, for the young talent. And that's the best way to convene, how to have an agenda to create good integration and also to have the glue of the culture. You can't transmit a culture if you are working from home all the day, having a back-to-back digital meeting. It can't work. So it's completely fair what you say. If you want to get some loyalty, strong engagement, and cultural fit, you need to have hybrid. And after the level of hybrid you need to have as a company depends on your culture. In an emotional company like Adecco, you need to have 3 days or 4 days. In some other companies, it could be okay to have 1 or 2. The reality after, it's a management principle to adopt also. If people are joining the office, you should organize something. That's what is new. Because if you are in front of your computer alone during all the day, and each day is the same, there's no reason why, having a mobility between your home and the professional office, it's not a good way to collaborate. You need to organize a little bit as a manager, and it's probably new.
Are there signs that they are being coached as opposed to being told what to do, right? Because maybe people might need to have a gut check. A leader might need to check, are they giving people enough space to do their work? How can they look around their office and sort of say, hey, does it seem like that things are going well?
I think if you want to understand what the level of engagement somewhere, look at the absenteeism, look at the turnover. You know everything about that. You know that absenteeism in many major countries has ramped up like hell. We have spoken in Spain, in Germany about, we have multiplied absenteeism by 2 in those countries. So it means the relationship to work should be based also on like a pre-engagement and a daily I would say, connection you have with your organization and your leader. So it's a good illustration of your company is sane or less sane. Same when you recruit people, your reputation is based on what people are talking about your company, their company. And if it's positive, you have more candidates. If it's negative, you have less candidates. If you don't know, it's like not all. So I mean, all those weak signals are important to understand what the level of connection and the glue you have between the company and the employees. So this one is important. After just you visit your countries, I used to do that in many countries in the world. And you can see if you have the level of energy, the enthusiasm, the excitement, you can feel it. We are humans. That's why robots, it's nice to do some things, but some of us, you need also to keep in touch with your people. And you understand immediately, because it's a chemical part of the job, if people feel comfortable and well-being is okay, or if you have some troubles to manage as a company.
You have been with Adecco since you were an intern at the company. How have you changed as a leader? What's something that you do now that would not have occurred to you when you first walked in the doors?
I think it's a leadership style, probably talking about education, spending more time in order to be up to date with what is around is probably much more challenging than before, dedicating more time. First, things are evolving so fast that to keep up to date, it's more investments that we never did before. The paradox, probably I'm visiting much more the operation today than before, and having probably less a path for execution than a path to define the frame, the goal to achieve, and to empower much more the people than before. Probably it's linked to the fact that today, to keep your people engaged, you need to give them trust and safety. And when they feel that the environment is a proper one, whatever the generation, we have been talking a lot about the generation. I think it's not a question of a generation, it's a question of leadership. People feel really more engaged and they commit much more on what they have delivered than before. I think those 2 things, the proximity on one side with a lot of empathy, a lot of proximity, and sharing as much as possible feedback, coaching pieces, etc., is one. And the second one, taking time for your own education with a lot of humility. I strongly believe in that. And perhaps a third one, before I was talking about the fact that you wanted to cook everything internally before. Today, when you want to build a competitive advantage, speed is much more important than before. So you need to partner with the best around you and to create a community of people, of companies who are able to create together an engine for growth and like a competitive advantage. Before it was okay to have insourcing or outsourcing, it was a choice. Today, I'm not sure it's a choice like before.
Is there a skill that you are looking to strengthen, get a little 5% better at?
It's another paradox. We say you have a much more prediction with data, so you can somewhere anticipate the needs, anticipate the cycles, etc. At the same time, you need to anticipate and to schedule much more than before. You can't just build your management on intuition. You need to structure, because that's probably the counterpart of having many partners in order to draft one single agenda. Collaboration takes time. So you need to organize this collaboration to make sure that all the components are working in a very structured way to deliver what you have to deliver, like speedboats, in a very fast way. Before, it was probably more intuitive, so it doesn't mean that you don't need entrepreneurship, creativity, etc. But if the execution plan is not well addressed, you can have some bad surprise at the end.
I have one last question for you, sir. Given the fact that you have been with Adecco all that time, is there a piece of advice that maybe a mentor or someone that you really respect gave you that you've really been grateful for?
Probably a piece of advice would be trust the people you have around you and leverage diversity. When you start, you never know exactly how to work with such a lot of diverse people. But when you have started to experiment that, you understand why nobody's perfect. And the first who is not perfect is you. And when you have understood that, but you have also leveraged the strengths of having diverse people building on an ambition, a purpose, a path, goals to achieve, you understand it's very powerful. And it's like, I remember perhaps just as a joke, my wife said, I wouldn't imagine to be a manager. It's 90% problem to solve and 10% pleasure. I say, yes, but the beauty of the 10% pleasure, it's not science. So it's a chemical aspect you have to drive as a team. It's not an easy one, but when you are successful dealing with that, you are so proud, not for yourself, but for the team.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Christophe, for this. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
For our viewers and our listeners, for more episodes of video podcasts from Meet the Leader, please go to the World Economic Forum's YouTube channel. And for more podcasts and transcripts, go to wef.ch/podcasts.
Ada yang perdebatan bahawa GST perlu dikembalikan semula kerana ada yang mempertikaikan bahawa SST itu tidak efektif.
Isu buruh kanak-kanak bukan sahaja dalam bentuk fizikal tetapi juga bentuk moden yang lebih licik dan juga terselindung.
Kita tengok buruh kanak-kanak dan ada juga buruh paksa kanak-kanak.
Kumpulan FB dikenali sebagai grup budak-budak sekolah rendah yang didakwa menyebarkan gambar remaja perempuan tidak senonoh telah pun ditutup.
Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. Niaga Spotlight takes us through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now this week on Analysis, we spotlight the topic of talent retention by design and some lessons from SMEs. Now, Malaysia's brain drain and talent flow resulted in a staggering 5.5% loss that is estimated of our total workforce in 2024. This exceeds 500,000 highly skilled workers, with most citing poor career pathways and rigid workplaces, according to World Bank data. Now, women aged 30 to 45 are the fastest growing demographic in Malaysia's outbound migration due to, as cited, lack of flexible work policies by Khazanah Research Institute in 2025. Now, indeed, Malaysia's rough 5.5% loss of its workforce is also nearly double the estimated global average of 2.9%. Yet, one homegrown SME has done the opposite. Now, this is crucial as SMEs make up close to 97.4% of businesses in Malaysia, according to SME Core in 2024. Central Force International, a local SME and services provider, posted a staggering 96.7% staff retention rate in comparison to other SMEs which struggle with turnover rates as high as 60 to 90%. Their strategy, not higher pay, but radical empathy and culture-first policies, digitize onboarding, true work-life integration, and leadership that leads with trust. Now, also at the Life at Work Awards 2024, Central Force International swept both Best SME and Women in Workforce Awards for transparent hiring, parental support, and real gender mobility. Indeed, Deloitte notes that companies with inclusive practices are 2.6 times more likely to retain staff beyond 5 years. So while policy debates continue to focus on tax incentives and upskilling, at this SME proves retention is often about dignity, not just bigger paychecks. Could Malaysia's brain drain solutions begin at the bottom of the corporate ladder, not the top? Well, Niaga Spotlight today features Sito Huayu, CEO of Central Force International, about the importance of talent retention for sustained economic growth and national development. Huayu, welcome to studios. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Tehmina. I'm really glad to be here today.
Fantastic. So I want to get started by really digging deep into the fact that quite often, right, Huayu, Malaysia's talent pipeline is obviously leaking at the source, and SMEs are really still viewed as stepping stones when it comes to people's career trajectory. So how do we actually flip that mindset? Tell me more.
I think you are exactly right. A lot of people, a lot of employees feel that SMEs is a great place to start off their careers, sort of learn the ropes and know what to do so that when they move on to the next role, they sort of, they get a better job, better pay and things like that, right? And I think for a lot of SMEs like us, that has been our fear for the longest time.
Right.
We always have that thinking that, oh, we're going to spend so much money on training, on development, upskilling, and just for someone larger than us to sort of pick them up and push them away.
Once we have spent all of that money in training them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what we find different, or what we noticed, was that if you just spend money on training and upskilling alone, they will eventually leave, right? Because they know that they now have a better skill set, they can demand for higher pay, they can move on to a better position. So it's not just training and upskilling, but you also have to show that you care for them and you have a place for them to develop their career paths further, right? So show them that there is a future working in an SME and there is just so much more to learn, and that this is a place for you to sort of harness and nurture yourself to grow further. So that's what we do at Central Force. In essence, we have three main pillars that guide our company's growth. So we have the pillar of care, and in care, we say we care for our employees and we care for the people beside us.
Right.
So always making sure that we are looking after one another, and we know that if they need something, we are there to be there for them.
Exactly. And I think it's so interesting that you've already, first off, mentioned care. Now, care is something that I think we'll dig a lot deeper into, since it's become a really critical part of many conversations, many policy debates, looking at the care economy, looking at valuing it. But you're saying that this is something that came into your company's mindset and culture actually once you came into the leadership role, right? So that's fantastic. And I think it's also pointing to a fact that quite often the tendency to see SMEs as stepping stones for employment, perhaps it's also reflected by employer mindset and culture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, end of the day, employees look up to leadership for them to give them a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. And if the employer doesn't change their mindset and they don't see themselves and their employees as sort of equals, right? And that's how I work with my employees. I know that they are probably experts in what they do. I definitely admit that I cannot do the operator's work as well as they can.
Right.
Right, because they have done this job day in and day out for so many years, right? And they have harnessed this skill set so much so that they are experts at what they do. And so I depend on them for their expertise, right? I need them to tell me what's going on in your field of work, right? What do you need to be supported? And my role is to support you. Right.
Exactly.
Let me help you do your job better. And it's with that mindset that we sort of build this harmonious relationship together.
So I think what you're doing is most definitely working, because while surveys show that over 70% of those who work in the SME sector are looking to move into MNCs because of perceived, better pay, working conditions, etc. But however, you're close to 97% retention rate. It defies national trends. Tell me more about what specific policies actually made that difference for your employees. And was anything there that you uncovered which surprised you about what employees today in 2025, or at least post-pandemic, since the 2022-23 onwards, what they value today?
Sure. I would say the essence of it all is to listen.
Right.
And it's what we do best, right? I mean, our main line of work is market research. So our job is to listen to people's opinions. So why aren't we also listening to our team? Right? So we run...
Fair point.
So we run employee satisfaction surveys, right? And we do this with our team twice a year. And we just tell them that we want to know what's going on, right? We want to be able to help you do your work better, and let us know what can we do on our part to support you. And you asked for what's surprising, right? Honestly, the surprising thing that came up, there were requests for higher pay, there were requests for more benefits.
Sure.
But the one overarching theme that came up was communication. Right? They really valued being listened to.
The two-way communication.
Yes, right? So they enjoyed having management and leadership come down to the floor, speak to them as humans, and sort of understand what they want from us as well. So communication as a forefront in our policy has been a key thing. Employee satisfaction surveys. We do something called a pulse survey as well, where we sort of act a little bit like spy operatives, where we just go around the field and we just get random people to check in. How are you feeling today?
Right.
How's your family? Is everything all right? Do you feel stressed?
It's like secret shopper, but secret workplace well-being.
Exactly, yes.
Okay,
And from there, we sort of get a sense of, is there burnout happening? Right? Or are there any other family issues that's going on? Or it could be just
person to person, right?
Person to person, yeah. So we found out that one of our employees was struggling with some pain, some back pain. Right. And after hearing about that, we were like, do you want to go see a chiro? Right? Let us sponsor you to see a chiro. Let's fix what's going on so that you can get back to work efficiently and effectively.
And what I'm hearing is you're not just listening, but you're taking actionable steps, right? So that actually does make a difference. Now let's from there go into the fact that you've gone into clearly moving beyond the very outdated work-life balance. We're talking work-life integration here. But at the same time, Wayu, how do you actually avoid flexibility theater? Because at the same time, you are an SME, you do have productivity targets that you need to meet. How do you keep within your KPIs as well, while not compromising on well-being of your employees?
Right. So I mentioned before we had three main pillars, right? So one of it was care, very important.
Sure.
The other two pillars was actually quality and ethics. So in the work we do, we make sure it's transparent and it's still of high quality. So these three pillars frame everything that we do, our policies, our flexible work arrangements, and also the workload itself, right? So everything is all embedded into their KPIs, taking into consideration all three factors. So for example, for a manager's KPI, they would have a section that says you have to be able to take your team out for team building events.
Right.
You have to run one-on-one sessions with them to know what's going on. And at the same time, along with other KPIs, they have to also commit to transparency in research. They have to commit to a certain level of quality and a net promoter score. So everything that we build in, we factor in all three pillars in all of our policies. And we make sure that we meet both the care requirement and also the quality and the ethics as well.
Right. So basically, you're looking at a more very integrated kind of a measurement of performance at the same time, so that everything is happening all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's many boxes to check. But at the same time, let's now move into rather under-focused upon dimension. But Central Force International is also doing pretty well. You won the Women in the Workforce Award, and your firm has introduced parental support, gender mobility, and bias-free hiring as well. But let's talk about internal resistance, if there was any, and what was the hardest aspect to maybe overcome when you introduced all of this?
Sure. The hardest part actually happens at the middle management.
Okay.
So the middle management have been people who grew with us over the years, right? So they've established themselves as reputable professionals in our company that deserve this title of a head of department or managers. But they've also grown up through hard work and effort and putting in the hours to do things. So when we try to promote such flexible arrangements, or we try to promote parental support, adjusted KPIs, the resistance came from middle management, because they felt like, I did things before in my own way, in my hard work. The juniors now can do it the same way.
Right.
But that's not how it goes, because the generations have been shifting. The thinking and the thought process and the mindsets have not been the same as it used to be 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We now need to adopt a practice where it's more DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We need to have a practice of more flexible work arrangements. And all of these things still needs to be accounted for. So resistance with the middle management has to be coached. What we do is we do a weekly coaching session with our head of departments.
I see.
And they get to be able to learn and understand and develop knowledge on this regard, and how they can also balance out their requirements for work as well as all these benefits that they're providing.
Exactly. So it's also about trying to integrate impact together with ensuring that those with the power in the workspace understand what and why they're doing. They're not just blindly following new instructions for, let's say, good parental support, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds really actionable to me. Tell me about perhaps our Central Forces experience with women in managerial roles. Now, in general, across Malaysian workspaces, even those which have equitable hiring, 50% women in the workspace, there tends to be still less than 39% odd of women in those senior leadership roles.
Right. In our company, surprisingly, actually, 60% of our management roles are held by women leaders.
Right, okay.
And it's something that...
Very encouraging.
It's very encouraging, right? But it shows more than that, right? Because I always tell my team it doesn't matter if you're male or female, what matters is the capabilities that this person brings. Right, and everyone has been promoted because of their own self-contribution, their capabilities, and what they can or cannot do for the company, right? So they got this role through their own efforts and means. And it shows a lot. Women leaders have an added skill, I would say. On average, women leaders tend to have more empathy.
Correct, and that's the workspace that you are trying to foster.
Yes, exactly. So having more empathy towards the team, towards management, and being able to find that right balance between the two has been working beautifully in the company, right?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wayu, thank you so much for the conversation so far. We do take a brief break. I will be right back with Niaga Spotlight. Don't go anywhere.
Ayah aku mati sebab cakra. Selagi cakra masih ada, jiwa aku tak tenang.
Hari ini kita berdepan dengan ancaman yang serius yang didatangkan oleh sekumpulan pemberontak yang kita sendiri tahu, organisasi Cakra.
Untuk kalahkan cakra, we need a new set of eyes and ears.
Event government tu pun semakin dekat. Siapa yang you nak recruit untuk penetrate Cakra? Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
You tahu kan tanggungjawab yang you akan tanggung?
Kau nak apa sebenarnya ni?
Saya nak awak masuk Cakra, jadi orang kepercayaan Aziz.
Tak bahaya ke?
Saya akan ada dengan awak. Every step of the way, saya akan pastikan awak selamat.
Aku nak kau monitor Surya. Aku tak nak siapa-siapa tahu pasal benda ni.
Bersama-sama rakyat, kita akan bangkit. Kuasa rakyat!
Honey Trap. Stream episod terbaru dahulu, eksklusif on demand dan 9 malam di Astro Citra.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight. Still with me, Tehmina Kaoosji. And today, of course, as before, we are looking at SMEs and talent retention by design. I'm speaking to YU, CEO with Central Force International, right here with me in the studios. So YU, getting back into the conversation and digging in a little bit deeper on what we just left off. Now, most SMEs worry that when you look at DEI, it is a luxury that they cannot actually afford to have in place together with so many other running costs, right? So what's your economic case for DEI as a survival strategy in SMEs? Because those numbers, no one can lie. 60 to 90% talent loss from the average SME in Malaysia. So that obviously makes survival quite the struggle. But why should they be also thinking and prioritizing DEI?
DEI, just as what it stands for, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. What doesn't sound great about that?
So tell me about it. Yeah.
Having diversity just means that you're having a wide range of a different perspective of things, right? Being able to have young and mature workforce, having from different ethnic backgrounds, different gender roles, even different backgrounds as well. Everyone gives a diverse perspective on things. If I were to just ask any company CEO or manager, when you run your meetings, wouldn't you prefer a more diverse team to sort of discuss and bounce ideas about? Chances are you would, right? And why wouldn't you want your company
more problem
to behave
solving.
that way? Yeah, exactly, right? And different perspective gives you a platform for greater creativity, right? Knowing how we can develop different plans better and more coherent and harmonious for everyone. So DEI, I think, has been something that has been a great platform for us, and I think it's a necessity moving forward, given how the Gen Z workforce nowadays truly values DEI. There was a report done by the World Economic Forum, I believe, which talks about the future of work. And it shows how 80% of Gen Zs wants DEI in the workplace, right? They want to be able to be treated as equals amongst their peers. And it's something so important nowadays as we're moving to the future. And Gen Zs are the future of our industry, right?
Absolutely.
And we have to be able to cater to this market as well. I've had the privilege of being on Talent Corp through the Lawa Awards. They've invited me to speak at a workshop in Johor Bahru recently. And I think their efforts in promoting DEI has just been excellent. And it's a real kudos to their initiatives as well.
I think it's all about reframing the mindset that rather than a cost center, it is a resilience multiplier when you have DEI. Right. So you've also described your approach, YU, with Central Force as deep culture, not deep pockets. So that can be vague, though, when it comes to, when it boils down to the hard facts. So what type of hard metrics or KPIs do you use to measure the success as a business asset, perhaps?
Yeah. Just to share off at first, right? Deep culture doesn't have to be high budget. It doesn't need to be complex systems. At the core, it just has to be simple but effective, right? Employee satisfaction surveys, I mentioned about pulse surveys in the past, earlier on as well. These are all really, really cost-effective ways to do things. It costs you next to nothing, but the impact of it is just so great, right? Everyone feels that they're being listened to and they want to share and feedback.
And on top of that, if you then work on those action points which are brought up, that gives them the understanding and appreciation.
Yes.
Yeah. Listen to, not just calculate it.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And I mentioned earlier that we tie these feedback surveys to the KPI itself, right? So then we see the difference, right? We see teams who don't value this as much, their performance doesn't match up.
Right.
And the data shows, right? When you treat your team well, they want to work harder for you, right? They don't mind going overtime. They don't mind putting in the extra hours just because you matter so much to them. That they want to be able to in turn support you through your growth as well.
To be able to meet whatever deadlines, etc., that you may have seasonally, right? Yeah. So that does sound like the way in which you can organize an entire company. However, I keep hearing what you say, that it is repetitive, it's continuous, weekly check-ins, so that takes effort, but it's clearly paying off. So let's go into the fact that SMEs often, they react to turnover, right? So you seem to design for loyalty. So what type of role should succession planning and even long-term career scaffolding play when it comes to the SMEs and their talent strategies? Now we're looking at a national level, trying to zoom out and look at that big picture.
The long-term planning is highly important, in my opinion. I think the growth of people are so exponential these days. The new generations are getting smarter and smarter, I have to admit. A lot of my young graduates in my team are just really brilliant. And we have to make sure that there's an avenue, as a career path for them, right? And even as managers and directors ourselves, we need to know who's our pipeline, right? Who's going to take over our work? Who's going to move on to the next role? And it's not so much about preparing the pipeline, but it's more about ensuring there's continuity and sustainability in the business. Because a lot of what I do may not be apparent to my juniors on my pipeline.
Sure.
So preparing that succession planning, preparing that transitional plan for them so that when they take on this role, they know what to do and they can improve it further through their own ideas and creativeness.
Exactly. And I think the other point is the fact that tracking these culture KPIs needs to become something hard-coded for SMEs, because we've also got data which shows that culture KPIs such as internal mobility within the company, referral rates even, and also team parameters, companies who actually track it see 40% better retention. So it's actually telling you that if you do something but you're not tracking it, you're not going to understand what kind of benefits that you're receiving out of it, right? Okay, so from there, let's move on into the final area that I would really like to pick your brain about. So if you could perhaps rewrite one policy when we look at, the 13th Malaysia Plan, but which would support SME-level talent retention, what would it be?
The 13th Malaysian Plan, although it's tabled for July later on, but I think when it was released, it actually had a lot of support for SMEs. And going through the plan actually gave me a lot of joy, because I can see the government's, the Madani efforts to grow this sector further and to improve and upskill the sector. And it brought in organizations like SME Corp, Talent Corp, and all these people are working so hard to really improve the economy. I don't think I would rewrite any policy, but what I would like to see would be an inclusion of something new, something that's targeted at more workshop-related events, something that explains and tells SMEs why do we even need these practices in the first place. Because there are grants for upskilling, there are grants for tech innovation, but I don't even know what to do if I don't have the knowledge for it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot of access, but at the same time, better enforcement, better understanding,
And
right?
better education as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you on that. So I think just going back into and clarifying one area, when you spoke about the fact that, you've got DEI in the workplace, support for women, etc., but you also mentioned parental support. Tell us about what is in it for men in the workplace, and how do men in your workplaces also need to be part of such initiatives, because ultimately nothing can be gender blind, right?
Yeah. So just as you say, right, parental support is parental. It is for both the
Mom
male,
and dad.
Yeah, mom and dad, exactly.
Yeah.
We have single dads in our company, right? We have people who have to raise their child individually, right? And it's no easy task. It is something that is really tough, right? Being able to focus on your family and work at the same time and doing it on your own.
Yeah.
So we don't look at it as a gender thing. It's not whether you're a mom or a dad, but rather if you have a child and you need that support, is what we can offer to you. So it's that flexibility sometimes. We don't stinge on the petty things, right? We don't enforce work hours to the T. But if you let us know and tell us that actually my son needs to be picked up from school, can I go pick him up and maybe I'll work an extra half an hour? By all means, right? We give you that flexibility so that you can be there for your family, right? And ultimately, I think family matters a lot to everyone, and we have to juggle both family and work at the same time. And we want to be able to give you that flexibility to do so.
Exactly, and also for men as well as for women,
Yes.
right? So you've started off with these policies like about 2018, 2019. How long did it take for everyone to sort of acclimatize and for men also to feel comfortable in taking on these roles just because they don't feel stigma anymore?
I would say it's an ongoing process. I don't think we will ever be at that point of 100%.
Understood.
I don't think everyone will fully understand why we do what we do or the understanding and rationale behind it. But it's that consistency, right? It's that constant informing and letting the team know that, hey, we're here, we're going to do all these things, and we're going to keep doing all these things for as long as possible. So as long as that consistency is there, it will continue to grow and grow and grow. But as, of course, teams leave and teams come in, then we have to rebuild that sort of connection and understanding again. So it's an ongoing process, but it's something that should be done anyway. Companies should behave this way for as long as possible.
Absolutely, and not just SMEs, but thanks so much for your time today. I think you're doing an incredible job, and all the best in the coming future.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's all we have time today on Niaga Spotlight, and it's quite clear that when it comes to SMEs and talent retention, the key is already there. It's about structure, it's about purpose, it's about trust, and that is how even small-scale employers can actually keep their employees and ensure it hems a little bit of Malaysia's brain drain that we are always discussing. I'm Tehmina Kaoosji signing off for now. We'll see you again next week with more economic analysis and business insights. See you then.